plate. The next important factor is the information contained on the data plate, which is generally located on the front panel of your forklift. This information is developed and provided by the forklift manufacturer. The data plate gives you the make, model, and serial number of the equipment. It also states exactly how much weight can be safely lifted and how high the load may be lifted. The data plate generally states the lifting capacity in 3 different classifications, such as 24-inch load centers, 36-inch load centers, and 42-inch load centers, depending upon the size of your equipment. The data plate also specifies how high the load can be lifted at specific load weights and load centers. Never modify or change the forklift in any manner without approval from the manufacturer. Modifying or changing the forklift can adversely affect safe lifting capacities and can create conditions to make the forklift hazardous to operate. Attachments. Attachments to forklifts can dramatically change the equipment's safe lifting capacity. Attachments come in a wide variety of uses and sizes. There are side shifters, which allow the load to be moved from side to side. There are pipe attachments that contain or hold the pipes being lifted. In this case, it can specifically affect the lateral stability of the forklift. There are other specialty attachments designed for specific loads. Next, there are a variety of booms, which extend the ability of the forklift to lift long loads. When using boom attachments, the longitudinal stability of the lift truck is affected and greatly decreases the safe lifting capacities of the forklifts. Next, there are other attachments, such as floor sweepers, tippers, or trash hauling attachments. Rams for specific service, such as lifting large wire coils and other uses. There are platforms used as attachments to protect people when being lifted on the forklift. Other attachments could include barrel attachments, which are designed primarily for lifting drums and barrels. Regardless of the attachment used, keep in mind the equipment manufacturer must approve this equipment. Forklift operators must fully understand how each particular attachment changes the safe lifting capacity of the forklift, the stability of the truck, and other potentially hazardous changes to the forklift on which you are using the attachment. Fork extensions, which are inserted over the forklift's existing forks, should not be longer than 150% of the supporting fork's length. By using forklift extensions, the safe lifting capacity is decreased. Fork extensions and all attachments must be attached to the forklift to prevent unintentional disengagement from the forks. Load centers. Before we explain what all this means, let's explain load center. The load center of a forklift is the distance measured from the center of the load to the vertical face of the forks. If you have a pallet that is 48 inches by 48 inches, and you have an evenly distributed load on this size pallet, you have a 24-inch load center. If you have an evenly distributed load on a longer sized pallet, you no longer have a 24-inch load center. If you use attachments extending the load center, obviously the lifting capacity of the forklift can be seriously diminished. The forklift manufacturer must approve forklift attachments. This approval information must be displayed on the attachment or forklift for the attachment to be legally used on each specific forklift. Let's go back to the data plate and those 3 different lifting capacities. Each size forklift has different capacities, but we'll use a capacity of 5,000 pounds at a 24-inch load center that can be safely lifted to a height of 104 inches. Keep in mind, all safe lifting capacities are based upon the load center and the mast being raised in a vertical or straight position. If you tilt the mast forward when lifting, what are you doing to the load center? You're extending the load center because of the extra weight of the mast and the extension of the forks. thereby reducing your safe lifting capacity as stated on the data plate. When lifting anything, think about the load center of the load, the mass position, and the weight of the load. Manufacturers provide basic weights and safe lifting capacities on the data plate. For example, where the forklift is rated at 5,000 pounds on a 24-inch load center, a 36-inch load center may decrease your lifting capacity to 4,000 pounds, and a 42-inch load center may decrease your lifting capacity to 3,000 pounds. If you add an attachment to the equipment, the safe lifting capacity may be reduced even more dramatically. Centers of gravity. Another engineer principle that affects your safe lifting capacity is the center of gravity. Technically, the center of gravity is the point on an object at which all the object's weight is concentrated. For symmetrical loads, the center of gravity is at the middle of the load. Certainly, if you have a forklift unloaded, you have one center of gravity. If you have a forklift with a load, that center of gravity changes. So the entire object, in this case the forklift and load, is the concentration of weight of the forklift and load. Additionally, as you raise a load, the center of gravity shifts away from the truck and towards the forks. Forklift engineers designed the forklift with this in mind and calculated the center of gravity shift in determining the safe lifting capacities. When equipment operators exceed the safe lifting capacity and try to lift excessive loads, or if they have extended load centers and try to lift heavier loads, the center of gravity can be exceeded and the forklift will tip over towards the load. That's why tilting a load while raised can be a major safety hazard. Tilt loads only when safe to do so and necessary for positioning loads onto racks or other material handling equipment. Of course, you're changing the center of gravity even more when you tilt loads. Tilting a load changes the center of gravity, and this can be very hazardous to your safety if you exceed the maximum safe lifting capacity of your particular forklift. Moving loads upward, downward, forward, and backward causes a shift of the center of gravity and can adversely affect the vehicle's stability. Avoid making jerky starts, quick turns, or sudden stops. Never use the reverse gear to stop a forklift truck. Use the brakes to stop the vehicle. When shifting from forward to reverse, the vehicle should be in a stopped position and the appropriate gear engaged before moving in the new direction. Technical terminology. We're not expecting you to remember too many technical terms, but you should be aware of some engineering definitions and how they apply to your particular forklift. First, there's the longitudinal stability. This is a fancy word that is the truck's resistance to overturning forward or rearward. This is demonstrated when you use boom attachments. Lateral stability is the truck's resistance to overturning sideways, as when using pipe attachments or extremely wide loads. Each class and size of equipment has different longitudinal and lateral stability principles, so it's up to you to remember how these affect your operation. A very short forklift would have less longitudinal stability than a very large or long forklift. Let's say you're driving a small, short forklift, and while traveling, you hit a 4-inch curve. Quite possibly, the longitudinal stability of this short forklift may cause you to overturn, whereas a large, long forklift would probably not tip over because it has much greater longitudinal stability. Lateral stability on forklifts can be viewed as wide or narrow equipment. If you have a wide track vehicle, your lateral stability is much greater than a much narrower type forklift. This means that narrow vehicles have much less lateral stability and can tip over sideways more easily than wide track vehicles. The term track is simply the distance between the wheels on the same axle of the truck. Wheelbase is the distance between the center line of the vehicle's front and rear wheels. Don't become confused with this terminology. Just understand the basic principles of the equipment.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Operator responsibility.
First of all, how many type of the forklifts? How many type of the forklifts? Because he has seven types of forklifts.
7 classes.
7 class.
And so I just today learned for 4 and 5, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we train for 4 and 5 today.
Okay, and second of all, over there have a number plate, for the plate. So how to check the weight? So the plate.
Yeah, all the forklift is gonna have the plate, so you can see the load capacity, all that information. So yeah, it has to be there on the forklift. All right, everybody, it is lunch break.
Lunch
so we'll
break.
see you in 1 hour, 11 to 12.
El facho, aquí anda el facho 3. Saludos, mi gente.
100 questions.
100.
Me preguntó aquí el facho.
I have a
1 hora tenemos de darnos dio por ahí el compa. Hay que ir a los burritos ahora donde.
On your notes, 100 questions divided by 5 equals.
No, I understand, but how to find the answer, the 100 question?
When we take the test, I give you the answer. It's gonna be 20 questions. 100 divided by 5 equals. How much is 100?
And where I learn the material? So my question, where I learn the material? So because this video is very complicated to understand.
Oh,
Muy
no,
entretenido de estar escuchando al facho.
You're taking notes, aren't you?
Yeah, I took the notes. Yes.
Yeah, I gotta check on your notes to make sure everything's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, the videos may be difficult, but the notes are clear. Good?
Yeah.
There it is, long break.
Ok, mis amigos, hasta aquí voy a dejar el video. Saludos.